In the final summer of his reign, King Philip II of Spain, the ruler of an empire so vast it devoured sunlight, was reduced to a decaying figure imprisoned within his own fortress of faith. He commanded continents, yet couldn't govern his own body. His skin rotted from the inside, his legs swollen with gangrene, and the cloying stench of death saturated the marble halls of El Escorial. They called him the prudent king, but prudence had fractured into paranoia. Every hour he demanded reports of provinces, of fleets, of gold, and of souls. Yet the one kingdom he couldn't regulate was the one collapsing within his own flesh. As the bells of his chapel tolled endlessly for the dying, Philip prayed, not for forgiveness, but for absolute control. Because for a man who once ruled the known world, losing command over his own body was the one punishment he could never accept. In the mid-1500s, Spain was not merely a country. It was a monolithic machine, meticulously engineered by Philip II to operate on divine precision. Every decree, every prayer, every death flowed upward to him, like data feeding a celestial processor. He believed his empire was not built by ambition, but by God's geometry. But, as every machine eventually does, his design began to fracture. Philip had inherited not just land, but exhaustion. Endless wars drained his empire's blood. The Escorial he built was a mirror of his own mind, cold, perfect, and suffocating. He tightened control over faith, law, and even suffering itself, believing that divine order could be manufactured. But as famine spread and silver turned to dust, his sacred architecture began to fail. He had built a perfect prison for himself. The ticking clocks, the endless decrees, all recording the slow collapse of divine design. By 1598, his body had revolted. Ulcers spread, flesh decayed, and the stench of rot drowned the palace air. Doctors arrived with holy water and useless remedies. His boils were drained. His screams became prayers. His faith became fever. The once mighty ruler studied his own decay like scripture. Every wound a lesson, every pain a verse. He recorded his agony, believing even death could be documented, controlled, engineered. But the body rebelled. Flesh turned gray, infection consumed him. Servants fainted from the odor, yet he refused surrender. Each morning he demanded to sit upright, signing decrees with trembling hands, blood marking royal seals. He feared not death, but disorder. And death was the ultimate chaos. Outside his sealed chamber, the empire imploded. Armadas vanished, gold lost meaning, faith turned hollow. His son, Philip III, was a shadow molded by fear. Ministers whispered of death, not rebellion. From his bed, Philip issued decrees to a world no longer listening. He banned laughter, sealed sunlight, and turned El Escorial into his tomb before time. He sought patterns in pain, signals in silence, trying to decode God. His empire mirrored his body, bloated, feverish, collapsing but unwilling to stop. His last command, to be buried beneath his own chapel, beneath the God he tried to equal. On September 13th, 1598, the machine stopped. Philip II, ruler of the world, was gone. Light pierced the room for the first time in months. Dust danced in the air. The maps of his empire lay useless. The bells tolled not just for him, but for the structure he had built, a system that could not live without its engineer. El Escorial became his monument, an empty engine of faith and control. Spain would never again command the world, because the man who tried to control death had only served it. And in that silence, one question lingered. Can any man truly design eternity? The machine had stopped, the engineer was gone, and history finally took a breath. Years after Philip's death, the corridors of El Escorial still whispered his name. Monks spoke of a strange presence, the echo of footsteps in empty halls, the faint creak of a chair moving by itself, the smell of incense mixed with something far darker. The king's death had not freed his empire, it had fossilized it. His systems of control continued without him, like an engine still running with no engineer. The bureaucracy he designed persisted in blind repetition, signing decrees no one read, enforcing laws no one remembered. In those halls, his ghost lingered not as a phantom, but as a process. His need for order had become eternal, a mechanical echo replaying across centuries. Travelers who visited the monastery described an impossible sensation, a presence that seemed to watch them from the edges of the tapestries, a chill that descended when they entered his chamber, and the overwhelming silence, as if the air itself still obeyed his command. Some said they saw him kneeling before the crucifix, murmuring in a decayed voice, "I was chosen to suffer." Whether it was imagination or something far older, no one dared to question it, because El Escorial was no longer just a monument. It was the mausoleum of a man who had tried to become divine code. Spain endured, but it was never the same. After Philip II, the empire survived as a body with its spirit removed. Wars continued, ships sailed, but the divine purpose that once fueled it had evaporated. Philip's successors inherited his rituals, but not his discipline. They ruled through inertia, reciting prayers to a god who no longer answered. The royal court became a theater of repetition, its grandeur decaying beneath the illusion of eternal power. In time, the colonies rebelled, the armadas broke, and the silver turned to rust. But in a deeper sense, Spain had died the same day Philip did. Because his empire was never truly about conquest or wealth, it was about control. And when control vanished, the heart of the machine stopped beating for good. Centuries later, historians would call him the last architect of divine monarchy. But to those who walk the silent corridors of El Escorial, his legacy feels less like architecture and more like an algorithm, an ancient, unyielding loop of faith, fear, and the human obsession to master time. And perhaps, in the end, that is what history truly is, a series of perfect designs that always end in decay,